So Act 1 begins with the Big Bang, actually, the beginning of the universe, and it will take you through the kind of emergence of life and evolution and human evolution, and I'll end with kind of the end of human evolution before they do agriculture and civilization. And then Act 2 is about they discover agriculture and civilization, and it's about themes in the history of pre-modern civilizations, i.e. before the industrial revolution stuff. And Act 3 is, those two acts are about 3 minutes each. Act 3 is about 6 minutes long, and that's about the kind of history of the last 500 years and themes in the modern world. I love it. So stuff like that. So it's you haven't heard it yet, Alison. I'm like, shit. So that's what's going to happen. Again, it does the whole thing in total is about 12 minutes, which is quite a bit too long for this format, really. But it's up to you guys. If you get bored,
we'll throw stuff.
Leave. Yeah, get out. Right, okay, I'll kick off. Big Bang, where it all began. Deep time beyond imagination. First pure radiation, then matter. Protons, neutrons, atoms getting fatter. With gravity making galaxies, stars and planets like Mars. And in one of these, amid the primal seas, a dash of energy, like CHN and SMP, making amino acids, RNA, DNA, the base of everything alive today. Trapped in a membrane forming long chains, information stored and self-replicator. Innovations can accumulate at a rate that fascinates. Ribosomes, chromosomes, meiosis, osmosis, a million chemical tricks, turning rock, water, air into trees, lungs and hair. Diversification followed descent with modification and non-random elimination of all but the best well adapted. I just read that. 3 billion years of the single cell, they've done well, but life went further when bacterial merger made the eukaryote of historical note, horizons open forward multicellular. Deep in the oceans, a Cambrian explosion caused the great radiation of prey and predation, things that help swim like fins and branching limbs, teeth, claws, grasping jaws, sensory perception, evasion and deception. The arms race continues apace forever, forever, ever, forever, ever. Life survived with distinction, 5 mega extinctions. The atmosphere is thin, coming from without or within. Asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions. Once or twice the planet's been covered in ice. But after adversity came fresh diversity. Other branches of the tree lead recovery. And so it came to be, the creatures of the sea crawled onto land, began to expand. From amphibian to Sibians and lots between we've seen. Colossal among the fossils were dinosaurs. Once ruled the world, today they survive only as birds. Mammals rise late to dominate. Now we've seen the creation through random generation of new entities and even environment, driven by selection against the direction of entropy, so it grows less magic tree. Note the propensity to increase in complexity and energy density. Evolution can operate on systems small and great, particles, chemicals, trees, plants and animals. The trends transcend different realms, so they hold true for the human world too. So, how did the great So how did a great ape lead to people who jake, swinging from jungle to concrete jungle? Swinging from jungle to concrete jungle, playing bunga bunga on the drums, scrapping keyboards with their thumbs. From where did Homo sapiens come? So we had chimpanzees up trees and walking on hands and knees before great mountains rise, the lands dried, forests broke, grasslands encroached. We stood up to see, hands freed, picked up rocks and sticks and things we need. But before I proceed, we should note another approach that suggests we emerged on an ancient beach, diving to reach seafood and all that's good on the shores of yore. The scientists agree, maybe, nearly. Check it out, the aquatic ape theory. Whatever the divergence, so can the emergence of long-lost cousins among them, Australopithecus and Homo erectus. Now, Homo habilis got his hands on this, the use of tools, learning like in school, but where selection rules. Don't die, straight meat from the bone, don't dine alone. Unfaced by ice ages, we wandered and wandered, hunted and gathered. Made a living in every climate and every continent and every environment, to the detriment of large animals that we found and eradicated. But this stage, humans already dominated. What will become of them? What will be their fate? Send the back one. Only fucked up a couple of times, but yeah. Should we continue?
Yeah.
Okay, so actually...
Just because we've got following, you've got to follow it.
Drink through this, Susie. Drink through it. So actually, it's sort of you following it up, but we're the Big Bang, and then humans evolved.
Can you hold up cards of what you're saying?
Is people not really understanding the words?
No,
I've always struggled with articulation. It has a problem that's dogged me through my professional life. Alright, so actually it's going to be about what happens next. We discover agriculture civilization, and then what happens in that. But before the illustrated. Millions of years of natural selection. What's for breakfast? Too many choices to mention. So we picked the best ones. Planting seeds in our garden, fruits ripen, nuts harden. A human hand guiding nature, a new accelerator. At a continental crossroads in the Middle East, we found wheat and tame sheep, so we sowed and we reaped. Irrigate to hydrate and create more farmland out of sand. Let's expand. More and more people in the land is getting out of hand. Now, when we plant seeds and pluck weeds, it's something earned, but it's also something learned. Use skills, knowledge in the global college, not static, but diffusing, people moving and choosing new things. Whether land suits, travel and trade routes, interaction and exchange, drive change, step forward to the stage, a player of every age. The threads are spread that form the human web. And so we're going to be a recurring theme. Apologies for the interruption there.
So beautiful.
So we built walls, market stalls, invented deities, the staities that help with the rain seas. But as soon as we make it, someone wants to take it, had to pay our mortal lords for protection from the swords. Soon we had towns, men wearing crowns, handing down laws and order. Warriors on the border, priests to pray and feast, all supported by their beasts of burden. Ruler after rumour, it began in ancient Sumer. Civilizations and empires, they fall and they rise, but the basics were the same for all the big names. From Babylon to Sargon, the Hittites were far gone. Shang, Zhao, Qin, Han, Tang, Song, Ramen, Qing, Sassanids and Safavids, Umayyads and Fatimids, Mamluks and Ottomans, Olmecs, Aztecs, Chan to Incas. The basics were the same for all the big names. They come and they go, some fast and some slow, but castles fall into the sea for every dynasty eventually. Horseback raiders, foreign invaders are just some of the reasons. Failure of the seasons, harvest less than pleasing. Hostile microbes fester in the lymph nodes, plagues and pandemics or simple demographics. Cause when population density reaches critical intensity, put more land to the plough, that's how we make do for now. Conquest adds to the harvest as long as we're strongest. But there are limits of expansion for village and mansion, inheritance divided, disunited, restless and dispossessed, social stress unless tax they bring for lord and king, desperate for revenues they abuse, civil war goes viral, downward spiral. We lament and repent, but violence relents only when forces are spent. Population can begin to recover from one cycle to another. Now, it might not be easy to see, but a civilized economy is an ecological entity. Sun in the soil, plants grow, men toil. Chop trees to clear fields, increase yield. Soil exposed to wind that blows like dust, there it goes. Uh-oh. Salination and dehydration can imperil a whole nation. But there's no greater famines that we've examined than caused by a super El Nino or a bad El Nino or a super volcano. No greater destruction than mega eruption. Darkened skies, crops fail, many die. We know not why, but the kingdom rarely survives. Finally, what's in his sneeze? Foreign germs, when they breathe from over lands and seas, can bring an empire to their knees. Han, Roman, Aztec, Incas or Aztecs, conquistadores in Mexico. Deeper in they go. Amerindians fell in great waves of plague. 50 million died and gave empty lands to the white man. I raise my palms and I pray, are we all to be slaves? But something's wrong. The gods are all gone. Send it back to that was a part of it. What happened at the end there was when Europeans discovered America is they brought with them the cold and influenza and measles and lots of diseases that... Oh, we got it. Okay.
Well done. It was amazing.
Trust everyone got it. Should I do the last one?
Yeah.
Well, how's that?
Is it going to all turn out?
So the webpad closed around most of the globe by 1500 AD. What would the next half millennium see? Primarily, the rise of the West from uncleared forests to unrestrained behemoth in only 9 centuries. In the process initiating great waves of change in every continent and every domain. Ancient traditions interrupted, familiar patterns of life disrupted. So, Europeans had taken home the learnings of Rome. Greece and Islam began to expand, not to mention Chinese invention, from ocean to ocean, ceaseless motion disturbing all oceans. Early in the journeys they struck purely by luck 2 enormous lands today we call Americas, divided by treaties, full of new species, numerous peoples and even some cities. At first through Spain there was a global distribution of the gains, we called it the Columbian Exchange. Potatoes, tomatoes, peanuts, chili and maize enrich the diet of Africa Eurasia. Medicines like quinine to combat malaria and nopolarias. In the other direction, diseases, of course, cattle and the horse, millions of people, the book in the steeple. Who harnessed the trade winds took the biggest wins. At the centre of the network, coast to coast were at a crossroads. At the centre of the network stood London and Lisbon, Amsterdam and Antwerp. I've already fucked this up. Sorry. Centre of the network stood London, Lisbon, cannons fired. What's on the horizon inspired? A concentration of wealth and innovation in a narrow location, inspiring new phases of evolution, the industrial and scientific revolutions. Now, great treks across the sea, voyages of discovery, collecting grand library scientific inquiry, had already been tried by Cheng Ho and Al-Razi, but their movements died, candles extinguished by the distinguished, books closed, minds froze. In Europe, too, popes crushed hopes, bound thoughts with ropes, offered Galileo the rock. So why no turning back? Slipping through the cracks between nations, the spirit of Francis Bacon kept escaping. Political fragmentation freed imagination to sustain the gain of invention and knowledge retention. The science had its appliance in pursuit of finance, an unholy alliance. Going so quick it's out of catalytic. And the flame of knowledge became a furnace burning in earnest. Not wood, but coal, oil and gas. Ancient reserves are fast, allowing production in mass. Inventions coming thick and fast. Train stations, steel ships, aviation. Distances shrinking, communication in an instant. The modern web, all the knowledge of the world in bed. Then we broke organic constraints on population capacity with new audacity. Of 7 billion people alive today, half would die without the supply of synthetic fertilizers. From the land of Kaisers, the Labour of Bosch and Haber are creators and saviours. Now, Europe wasn't the first expanding society, but what volume and variety of techniques of infiltration, domination and exploitation. By 1900, very few had not succumbed yet. Trading guns and spades in Africa for slaves across the waves to lands of freedom to harvest the cotton the industry feeds on. Great Britain exploited division to complete the acquisition of India, a monopoly in opium, pushing it in Canton, a trade to be counted on until the prices got better and better for textiles from Manchester. Exports industrial and just as irresistible. Opposing unequal treaties of forest and people and forced protection, lacking protection, domestic wares can't compete in fair, so they disappeared. Now, economists will disagree, but every major modern economy grew behind tariffs and barriers until among the leaders they no longer needed them. So how did the rest of the world react when we could? That's true. Don't get me started on that, actually. Orthodox economics does not bear up to history. Anyway, so how did the rest of the world react when they heard the knock of Europe as it neared? Old priorities of assembling armies took on new urgency, every word emergency. Modern supplies and weaponry required large bureaucracy and education and industry. Traditional hierarchies faced redundancy. Some were adaptable, modernity compatible, like say for Japan, less so for Islam. Threatened by this, elites might resist, and still the persistence of problems of subsistence, demographic cycles, compounded credit crises, internal disorder could open the door for hostile takeover. With all this novelty, turmoil and change, thinkers needed new ways to explain, new philosophies, new ideologies. Newly empowered, 18th century Enlightenment, highlighted with subtle refinement the irrationality of monarchy, denied its divinity, challenged nobilities and advocated liberty. The newly empowered individuals enjoying education, political participation, and pursuing their dreams. Initially, this meant just men of means, but eventually led to the emancipation of slaves, women, and whole nations. So Smith and Ricardo remarked it, allow freedom too in the market. Prices of food and labour subject to the favour of supply and demand. The invisible hand can give and it can take. The earnings you make might not be a living wage. A different kind of slave with nothing to lose but their chains. So the manifesto of Marx was heard in all parts, read aloud in town squares in the parks. And when old regimes collapsed, we saw red in the maps, but only where the old regime collapsed. The communist experiments industrialized whole continents. I need to read this. Struggle with this bit. Sorry. Communist experiments industrialized whole continents. A new social utopia driven by ideals and paranoia. They pursued with zeal. Enemies imagined and real. Performed wonders and great blunders. Defeated the Nazis in the greatest war in history. Unlocked the energy of millions of people and atoms. Put the first man in space. Yes, it happened, and it was Yuri Gagarin. While Lenin, Mao, and Stalin filled up the gulags and manufactured famines. Whatever the political model, we had some things in common. Government administration, war, health and education had roles to fill required new minds and skills, which the state tried to create from a blank slate. Loyalty and patriotism was bred in the school system. Learning histories that won't tell you rhymes like these. Worship at the culture, worship at the altar of nation and culture. Oh, what a glory, pro patria mori. Before the 20th century, more men and armies felt at ease than to their enemies. But now, germ-free and clean, they face machines, new ways and means of death and destruction. Mass ranks, charged guns and tanks and trenches, gassed and shelled as hell. Silence the bells, fill the skies with death that flies. Home from the front's come home. Far storms, napalm and A-bombs, we have new powers to rival gods. And times of peace planning didn't cease. Military got enormous investment, invented computers and the internet, led to financial ruin for the Soviet Union. In China under Chairman Mao had been laid low, but since the 70s results have been heavenly. A Politburo of engineers nurtured and steered a mixed economy that doesn't work in theory, but the world's manufacturing centre flows up the Yangtze Delta. In the name of consumption and industrial production, habitat destruction and climate change, decreasing the range of plants and animals. They're not infallible. The great wave of extinction, blink and you'll miss them, while we're busy raising billions of incomes. It's getting hot on here, so turn up the air conditioning and put more demand on the electricity system. Are we nearing the time for geoengineering? Go for out pollution. What's the solution? Can we turn to the wonders of technology, synthetic biology, printed in 3D, computers you wear, big data you share. I'm an MC, tech and MOOCs. There's plenty of opportunity in connected communities. You never know what you might find with so many minds. I hope you've enjoyed this trip to olden times. History don't repeat, but it rhymes.